We will be starting off with Adam Schiff, but since he's not quite here yet, Val, would you mind doing the land acknowledgement?
The California Democratic Party Senior Caucus wishes to honor the homeland of the First Nations people of California. The CDP Senior Caucus acknowledges that the land where we live, work, and enjoy is the unceded territory of the First National Tribal people since time began. The CDP Senior Caucus wants to offer recognition and respect to counter the doctrine of discovery with the true story of the original tribal people who are here, and to support the reconciliation of a government-to-government relationship of these sovereign nations. We are surrounded by their traditional ancestral territory, and we must strive to understand the spiritual knowledge First Nations people carry. Their strong cultural values have enabled First Nations resiliency to survive. This was written for us by Redwood Flower from the Sherwood Band Rancheria of Como.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing Adam Schiff yet, so why don't we go ask Howard or Angelica if Howard is here. Howard is in a meeting that he can't get out of right away. The question, do we have a quorum? So Howard, Angelica, one of you, do we have a quorum?
I'm giving Howard a moment. We do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've gotten to that. So while we're waiting, we will start our officer reports. And then as soon as the congressman enters the meeting, we will go to him.
Fair.
Actually, it looked like he is
Janine.
on, I believe.
Yeah,
Hey, everyone.
he just came on.
Oh, he is on. All right. Hi.
How are you today?
I'm speaking for the whole group. I'd say we're pretty fine and interested in hearing what you have to say. So you are the first thing on our agenda, and we'd like to hear from you about your run for the Senate and the incident that occurred over the last week. So if you would honor us with that, we would appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me on today. And yes, it was a rather atypical week last week for me. But look, I wear this censure resolution as a badge of honor. And let me tell you a little bit about what was behind it. There's a representative from Florida, kind of a MAGA representative named, ironically, Luna, who introduced a resolution. Actually, she's introduced only 5 bills in her career in Congress, 4 of them attacking me. I think she needs a new hobby, but nonetheless, the resolution that came up a couple weeks ago was voted down, including by 1 out of every 10 Republicans. It basically was kind of a hodgepodge of Fox talking points attacking me over investigating Trump's Russia misconduct, investigating his Ukraine misconduct, leading the impeachment, serving on the January 6th committee. And when it was voted down, Donald Trump issued a statement basically saying that any Republican who didn't support the censure resolution should face a primary challenge. And sadly, that had the effect that his threats usually do of marshaling every single one of them in line. You know, while I consider this censure to be a badge of honor, nonetheless, it has, I think, very serious consequences for the House and for the country. I say that because this is clearly an effort to go after someone they believe has been all too effective in defending our democracy and standing up to Trump. And while it's not going to deter me, they hope that by the use of this kind of fraudulent and defamatory resolution, they can discourage other Democrats from playing a leadership role and standing up to their autocratic ambitions. And while it won't deter me, I can't say for sure whether it will deter others. It's also an effort to reinvent history. After the censure resolution, they're now talking about introducing a resolution to somehow expunge Donald Trump's 2 impeachments, as if that is possible. But McCarthy has signaled his support for that. So this is an effort to go after the truth tellers, rewrite history, and to their point of view, hopefully reinstall their autocratic leader. And this is dangerous for the country. Censure is a serious process, at least it has been in the past, used for financial improprieties and serious transgressions, criminal convictions. It's not been used to go after a political enemy, and do so in such a transparent and partisan way. But it's another kind of step down for the House as an institution. McCarthy has lost control of his conference. And the day after, in fact, the censure resolution was taken up, we took up a resolution involving the impeachment of Joe Biden. So this is what the House has sadly descended into. But the other cost of this resolution, and this sort of gets to the topic of our conversation today, is that they took 2 weeks on this resolution. And that was 2 weeks where the Congress could have been spending time on addressing housing issues and addressing homelessness and the high cost of goods and addressing the challenges facing seniors and addressing the opioid crisis. So it's a real cost to the House, which is really not engaged in any kind of productive legislating or lawmaking. The one thing that we have done is we raised the debt ceiling. And I gotta say that I was deeply concerned about the administration negotiating over the debt ceiling, and the degree to which Republicans were holding the whole economy hostage. But the president did a hell of a job. And I supported raising the debt ceiling. I'll tell you, I've never gotten so many thank yous for raising the debt ceiling. Indeed, I've never gotten thanked for raising the debt ceiling until this year. But people understood the costs. And the cost would have been 6 million California seniors would not have gotten their Social Security checks on time. It would have meant millions and millions of retirees all over the country would have lost tens of thousands of dollars out of their retirement savings. Millions of jobs lost. It would have been a disaster. And at the end of the day, my governing philosophy is you go for the results rather than the rhetoric. You get things done for people. People send us to the House and they send us to the Senate to get things done. And I'm very proud. I've got a long record of getting things done, whether it's building light rail in Los Angeles or it's building an early earthquake warning system up and down the west coast of the United States, whether it's getting up-to-date textbooks in our schools, as my legislation did, or a patient bill of rights for Californians, or legislation passed that protects press freedom or attacks the problem of nuclear nonproliferation. I have a long record of getting things done, working with others and getting things done, which is why a majority of California House Democrats have endorsed my campaign, which is very unusual. We don't, as a delegation, usually take sides in a race among our colleagues, and we have 3 good colleagues running. But they've weighed in very heavily, along with 100 to 200 state and local elected leaders up and down California. And they've weighed in because I think they're looking for the same thing Californians are looking for, and that is who can work in the Senate to get things done, to move the state forward, to address the very serious challenges we have, which is why I'm also the only candidate in the race to have the endorsement of 4 statewide labor unions. In fact, I'm the only one that has even a single statewide labor endorsement. I have 4. And again, this is, I think, the product of a record of getting results, but also being in the center of the fight. As the censure resolution indicates, they don't go after people they don't consider a threat. And I'm going to continue to defend our democracy. In terms of the issues, most keenly facing seniors, and obviously there are a lot of them, I've been a staunch advocate for protecting Social Security, for expanding Social Security. I'm part of the Caucus to expand Social Security. I voted down repeatedly efforts to raise the retirement age. I've been a staunch defender of Medicare and expanding Medicare. But also, I think part of the challenge, and this is a central part of my campaign, is that the economy is simply not working for millions of people, including millions of seniors. And, you know, to give you one, to me, very pointed illustration, I got a call some time ago from a friend who I knew when she worked on a commission during the Gray Davis administration. And she called me some 25 years later to say that she was now 80 years old. She'd been divorced, got practically nothing in the divorce, and didn't have enough money to get by. And she was looking for a job. Could I help her get a job? She's calling me at age 80. She was able to get some subsidized housing, but even with that, she couldn't make ends meet. And this is a predicament that is all too familiar for people all over the United States. And I think it comes from the fact that policymakers simply have not kept up with the changing nature of work. When for the previous generation, many people worked for the same firm their whole life, had a retirement plan, had good health care. But we're now in an economy where that's just not true for millions and millions of people. And with artificial intelligence, there's the threat of that becoming even more severe. We have to make universal healthcare universal. We have to make sure that we have a strong safety net. We have to make sure that people can earn a decent living and a place to live. My father is 95, and my brother and I were visiting him in Florida for Father's Day, which was wonderful. Watched a lot of great old movies. But we're wrestling with the same thing so many millions are wrestling with, which is long-term care. And he wants to live at home. He lives at home now. He wants to continue living at home, but he can't live at home without care in the home. And affording care in the home is so difficult. And it just shouldn't be that hard for people to be able to get the care they need. And this is also a very, very high priority of mine. I've introduced a number of bills in Congress to establish an interagency council on housing affordability, to study ways that we can work together at the state, local, and federal level to create more affordable housing and make sure that there's access to that housing. Work on legislation to create a navigator program like we had for the Affordable Care Act to help people navigate and find housing they can afford. I've introduced legislation to create tax incentives to create more affordable housing. These are some of the initiatives I've taken on to address part of these problems, and I'm thrilled that in the last session we passed the Inflation Reduction Act and attacked the problem of prescription drug prices, but there's a lot more we need to do there. But let me pause here. I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk with you today, and particularly after such a historic, for lack of a better description, abuse of the House process last week.
Thank you very much. Well, what I'm going to do is something that might not work. We have only about 5 more minutes of your time, and I'm wondering if anyone has a question, and if so, don't just unmute yourself, raise your hand, electronic hand. If you're on the phone, hit *9. And first one to raise their hand can ask the question, and I see it's Marilyn Riley. So go ahead, Marilyn. After you unmute. Marilyn. There you go.
Sorry, Mike, I couldn't unmute.
Well, you have now. Ask your question. Make sure it's brief.
The debt ceiling mechanism is idiotic, and it harms us domestically and internationally. Is there any move to get rid of it?
There is, and many of us, myself very much included, favor getting rid of the debt ceiling. I think you're absolutely right. This is a requirement that Congress imposed on itself, and we can unimpose it. And it's not having the intended effect. It's not stimulating a discussion or bipartisan work on what we need to do to deal with deficit and debt. Instead, it's being used as a kind of a hostage mechanism to hold the whole country's economy hostage by a party that can't get the austerity policies that it wants through the Congress. And while the Biden administration did a great job in negotiating, and I'm frankly astounded that the Republicans went along with what they did, it does just encourage further hostage taking in the future. And so we ought to repeal it. There are people proposing efforts to repeal that requirement. And I think we should amend it so that neither party, although it's just the Republican Party that has done this, can use it to exact some kind of budget that doesn't enjoy the support of the American people.
Thank you. Timothy, do you have a brief question? Your hand is up next.
Yes, I mean, the fast-moving stories this morning about the chaos in Russia, the rebellion that's brewing. First of all, thank you for everything you've done. And particularly my grandparents came from Western Ukraine. And the fact that the government stepped in as they did, even a little late, I think has made all the difference. And I thank you for your support for that. But the chaos that's there, and the thing that I think we don't pay attention to is the unseen hands of the money flows, and particularly the investment flows in the world that Putin had his fingers on that made this a particularly difficult thing. And so where are we headed in the next year from your perspective in terms of the Congress and Senate?
Yeah, I'm glad you raised this question, and I've been watching this with tremendous interest. This is the biggest, I think, debacle since the initial days of the war when the Russians got so bogged down. And while I don't really doubt Putin's ability to put down this rebellion, it nonetheless is a utter disaster for the Russian military because Prigozhin has a pretty effective fighting force and has a certain amount of support in Russia. And the critiques that he's leveling against the Russian military are just going to cause further demoralization. And of course, they're completely preoccupied now with this internal fight while Ukraine is initiating a counteroffensive. So great news for Ukraine. In terms of what this all means and where we are in Congress, I'm confident that we can continue the bipartisan support for Ukraine through the next year and a half. Now, depending on what happens in the presidential election, and God help us if we don't succeed, then all bets are off. On the far right in particular, there's this school being driven by Tucker Carlson. And I'm glad for many reasons he's off the air, now making a pernicious partnership with Twitter. Tucker Carlson's succeeding in doing something we all thought impossible, which is make Twitter even worse. But he has, commanded kind of the intellectual thought of the Republican Party when it comes to Russia and Ukraine, and he's just totally in the Russian camp. And so I don't want to count on Republican support for much longer. The center still holds, but we need to continue to make the case why this is important.
Thank you. Ukraine can be a strong advocate in that region, I think, as their buffer between Russia and Western Europe. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have time, Congressman Schiff, for one more question? It is 9:20, which is the time we were told you had to leave. Can we squeeze one quickie in? You're muted.
Let's try to get one more quick question in.
Okay. Sophia. Are you there, Sophia?
Yes, good morning, Senator. Thank
Good
you
morning.
for being. My question to you is, well, comment first off, freedom of the press.
Excuse me, Congressman at the moment.
Oh, yeah, Congressman.
I wasn't going to object.
Okay. Freedom of the press is so important for democracy. I'd like to hear your thoughts on what is happening with Julian Assange and the conditions he's currently facing.
Well, Julian Assange is facing charges unrelated to his journalism, unrelated to his actions in terms of releasing U.S. government or other materials, and so I don't know what's happening in terms of extradition or potential extradition, or the circumstances where he is holed up. I will say this, I've long been a champion of press freedom. In fact, when I got to Congress, I formed a bipartisan, bicameral caucus on freedom of the press, which I've continued to lead ever since. Ironically, my original partner in the House was a fellow freshman named Mike Pence. Little did I know that he would go on to serve an administration that has been the greatest threat to press freedom our country has ever known. But we continue to champion the rights and interests of journalists around the country, around the world. We have been highlighting, for example, the Wall Street Journal reporter improperly being detained in Russia. We've been highlighting the murder of journalists in Mexico, the incarceration of journalists in places like Eritrea and Turkey, two of the largest jailers of journalists. We continue to champion journalists, bloggers, and others in China who are similarly being persecuted. So this is a real priority for me, and will continue to be. In fact, one of the bills I passed in Congress, signed by Barack Obama, was the Daniel Pearl Freedom of the Press Act, designed to make a part of the annual State Department Human Rights Report a chapter on press freedom around the world and how countries were respecting press freedom or when they weren't, and what efforts they were making to hold those who murdered journalists accountable. So I appreciate the question, and I'm certainly a staunch advocate of freedom of the press. Thank you all for having me.
And thank you, Congressman Schiff, for giving us in the senior caucus the opportunity to hear from you, and we heard from the other two senatorial candidates last time, and for giving us some insight into your thoughts on these other issues. So have a good day, and thanks again for joining us.
Oh, God, sometimes I'm
Well, that was unfortunate.
Well, thanks, everybody. You take care now.
All right, bye.
You guys.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Okay, up next is the brief officer reports. Howard, please stay muted.
Yes.
So you're ready to talk. And first is the chair. So all I'm going to say is, first of all, Howard, please stay unmuted. That's the second thing I'm going to say is that I'm Mike Thaler. I'm from Bonita, California, which is about 5 miles north of the Mexican border in San Diego County. I'm your chair, and I want to tell you what we have planned for the upcoming year. And one of them is we're talking about having meetings similar to this ones that are shorter than the meetings that we would normally have at a convention or at an e-board meeting. And the subjects of those meetings will be determined by you, the members. And we later on in this meeting, we will take a little poll to see what kinds of things you're interested in. We have a great team of officers, and we are relatively new. Very few of us have been an officer of this caucus for more than a few months. So it's not like we've been around for a long time, but we've got some new ideas and some things that I think will make the caucus really worthwhile for everybody in it. So that's my report. Next up, we have the Vice Chair of the North, who I must apologize in advance for because I can never pronounce her name right. But our Vice Chair of the North is Val Michalski. I'm sorry, I don't call her by her first name. So go ahead.
Try. Okay, I'm Val Michalski, and I live in Philo in Mendocino County, about 17 miles from the ocean. And I represent Northern California. And so on the West Coast, it's very blue and liberal, and the East Coast is very red. And so it's an interesting contrast. I also represent the Bay Area and Sacramento. So we are always busy with issues. But one thing I wanted to alert the senior caucus about is that this is a time for working with the platform committee to make sure that our California platform includes everything that we want to work for. And we want to hold our elected officials up against. And so we're going to form a ad hoc committee to review the senior plank of platform. And we'll have a special caucus Zoom meeting that will work on those issues. The senior plank was modified in 2021 by Ruth Carter, and we will be upholding that, and your participation is key. So look over the platform and what do you think needs to be changed or revised or modified? Thank you.
And thank you, Val. Next up is someone whose name I have no trouble pronouncing. It's our Vice Chair Central, Dottie Smith.
Good morning, everyone. And that is an easy name because Smith, and so is Jones is an easy name to pronounce. But anyway, I just like to say, in terms of, I was very pleased with the parents of so many folks at our conference from Central California, my hometown in Central California. And what I have encouraged people to do from Central is to make sure that we are involved and we have a voice. Because in many instances, I have said through the years, and some of you may have heard me, that Northern and Southern California are not the only parts of California. Central is also. And so I was pleased to see many people from the Central Valley at our last conference. And I'm saying also that I'm pleased to be on an active member, and I will continue to have a voice and make sure that Central is well represented. And thank you all for all that you do.
Okay, thank you very much, Dottie. Next up is our Vice Chair of the South, Janine Rome. So Janine, unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mike. Hi, everyone. Janine Roan. I am from Northeast LA, LA County. And I'm rather new to the governance as an officer. And I'm excited by the caucus. I think that what Val was saying about having ad hoc committees, to work together in smaller groups to accomplish some things is really valuable. I really would love for the senior caucus to continue to be a strong voice, get to be a stronger voice within the state party. I think at the last meeting, I mentioned having an ad hoc committee working also to comment on the bylaws changes that have come up in with this last version. Not that it will go anywhere, except I do think that there's a overall feeling from some of the other caucuses that at least creating a record would be great, but it's things like this that I think would be really valuable for us moving forward. So appreciate everyone being here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. Next up is our secretary, Howard. This time, unmute yourself and say a few words.
Hello?
Yes. Howard, go ahead.
Yes, this is Howard Agerman, the secretary. I just want to report we do have a quorum, and I just want to say welcome to everybody. And I'm from AFGE, represent Social Security employees, and we are rated the worst agency in the United States, the place to work. So it's really important that the caucus do its best to ensure that people continue to get their Social Security benefits. I'm really proud to work with everyone on the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Howard. Next up, we have our treasurer, Angelica Moyes.
Good morning, everyone. Angelica Moyes here. I've been your treasurer for a couple of terms now. happy to be working with the current executive committee and had a wonderful experience with our past immediate outgoing chair, Ruth Carter. I've been excited about working on submitting requests on behalf of our caucus for the CDP to be taking positions on legislation, and we've certainly got more work ahead with AJR 4. Hopefully we'll get that to pass, and I guess that's on our agenda in a little bit, so I'll actually stop there. But good morning, everyone.
Thank you, Angelica. Up next is our communications officer, Carol Taylor. Go ahead.
Hi.
Carol.
Good morning. I hope you can hear me clearly.
We can't see you clearly, however.
Oh, because I have the video
All right, well,
on.
we're seeing a wall. There we go. Well, whatever, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's really weird. So
There you are.
I communications officer right now. I'm running for treasurer. And in my statement, I mentioned that I was first elected as treasurer in 2013, but I haven't been treasurer in many, many years. I look forward to it. So one thing that's happening because we do want to become more, I want to use the word intimate, more personable, face-to-face, if you will, in this caucus, we are going to be using different channels of communication. And so anybody who'd like to volunteer to help with that, with the different platforms, with different writings and outreach, please contact us. We'll give you an email address to volunteer for. So one thing that's coming up with us is that we have, as of the last party report, 253 members, and our mailing list is 890 people. Yes. And so MailChimp has said we have to cut that down to 500. So that means we're going to be eliminating, close to 400 names. So I think we have all the contact information for the members. We have contact information for everybody who's attended the Zoom meetings and the personal ones. So I think the very active people shouldn't be cut off from this list, but I'm just putting it out there. If you don't hear from us, contact us and we'll, but it shouldn't be a problem for people. I'm really excited about what we have planned ahead of us. And I look forward to working with you guys in the next year. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you very much, Carol. That concludes our brief officer reports, and they were brief. Thank you, officers, for keeping that way. I'm not going to say it. Well, I guess I could say it out loud. We're actually slightly ahead of schedule, which was not expected. But in any case, up next, we have a presentation on the Congressional Resolution AJR 4, which is to stop further privatization of Medicare, which has been a big issue among us in the senior caucus to avoid privatization of Medicare. We're going to double team that with Janine and Angelica speaking on that. So go ahead, take it away. Once you unmute.
So sorry, I was trying to get a link and I'm putting it in the chat right now. This is a link to AJR 4. And many of you know that we had a resolution that was, well, we tried to get it through at LA County to strengthen traditional Medicare, and in it we had to modify it a lot. Angelica knows, to say, not be so clear against ACO REACH, and it didn't. It still hasn't passed. And then there was a resolution that went at the convention that Ruth and many others were behind, and it got altered quite a bit to the point where it actually didn't it didn't really do any good to making a statement against ACO REACH program. So, and which is many feel is another way to privatize Medicare. So, but Pilar Chavo, our assembly person here in Los Angeles County, she put through a JR4, and this is a resolution at the at the state level, and it asks Biden to eliminate it. It's a program that got started with Trump, and there was a small modification when Biden came into place, but it's still, there's a lot of seniors that are we had a presentation about it at the convention, so I don't know how much to explain for that, so I don't want to take too long, but it passed the assembly. So I put a link to the actual, there's a lot of things to that link. It's the link for any legislation that's at the state level. So you can look at who is supporting it. So it passed at the assembly. It actually has 40 co-authors, and it asked President Biden to get rid of the program, basically. And so what's going to be happening, and Angela can speak to what's going to happen within the CDP, but this resolution will go the second week of July. I believe it's the 12th. It will go to the Health Commission of the legislature. It'll be voted on there. If it passes there, it'll go to the Senate floor. If it passes there, it'll go back to the assembly because there's been a small amendment to it. So they need to look at it and approve it because it originated out of the assembly. And then if it passes, it goes to Governor Newsom. So all of that will probably, I mean, it would be ideal if it happened by September. By the end of September, and then it could move forward and go to President Biden as a statement from the state. So I am in touch with Assemblywoman Chavo's group, and they suggest that there's a deadline, and I can email out this information. There's a deadline to make comments. We can't do anything as a caucus, but as individuals, you can take a look at your representatives, see if they're in support. I think the big push would be for the Republican representatives to hear from their constituents that they are in favor of this resolution. So I'll make sure that we communicate. There's a link you can go to write directly. And there's a deadline to do that, which is about 7 days out. So I would think by 4th of July weekend is when you would need to write to make a statement. Angelica, sorry, I took up a lot of time there.
No, that's great.
Angelica, could you describe just very, very briefly what will happen if ACO REACH were to become nationwide spread, you should say? I mean, why are we so against it?
Oh, well, okay. So as Janine was explaining, under the Trump administration, there was a previous program which has now been supposedly replaced by ACO REACH, which is a Biden administration program, but there are some improvements made to what was previously being used, but it's still very problematic in that I guess some of the main things are that less money, more money will be spent, but less of it for actual care. Oh, sorry.
Angelica,
Can
if
you
I
hear
could
me?
just interrupt, I went ahead and put the resolution in the chat as a PDF as well.
Okay, oh, you entered it there?
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of scrolled up, but it's in the chat.
Yeah, there's a link to it on the website, but then also I put in a PDF of the resolution in the chat.
Okay.
I mean,
if
I can
if I
try to
could add
recap
something-
as well.
If I could add something, it's been determined, I think, by the Government Accountability Office that if ACO REACH becomes nationwide and replaces Medicare, more or less, Medicare will go bankrupt in 2024, which is next year. So we need to fight to keep it from happening. Angelica?
And yes, so I will just, I guess, what I was prepared to speak about this morning was, I guess, what we're doing with the party, with CDP. And so the work that I'm focused on is preparing to submit a position request to the CDP legislation committee. And we had done that previously with other legislation. For example, the most recent being SJR 11 and HR 5723, which was the Social Security Sacred Trust. So it will be similar work in that I will, I guess I have a call to action for all of you. And I know that some of you had previously worked with me. Hi, Cynthia Hart. I know there are others here that had worked with me on doing this very thing for our request, our caucus, senior caucus request to the CDP to take a position on this, on AJR 4. And so I worked with clubs throughout the state. Some representatives of those clubs were more independent, and that was very helpful to me. But we created similar resolutions that were then passed at various clubs, as well as at the central, at the committee levels. And I believe for AJR 4, some of that work is already being done by others. And I will have to follow up with that. But I know I'm focused on clubs and then actually getting that, the request put together following the procedures of the CDP.
Okay. Do you two have time to take a question?
Sure. Mike, I also wanted to add, and I put it in the chat, that LA County Democratic Party voted in favor of, even though we had a difficulty with our own resolution going through, they supported her her resolution. The legislative committee submitted it, and it got voted on, I think, last week. Sure, I'd love questions.
Okay, well, I see that Timothy has his hand up again, although we'd love to hear from other people too.
Yes, just a
quick question.
Just very quickly. I am a physician. I've seen this over the years. We're getting paid for doing paperwork. It's kind of hard to see outside the system, and even just the stark differences between an Advantage and original Medicare is not well distinguished. So I just wanted to, it's been a kind of a jobs program in the hospitals, the government actions, and it's just a rolling thing. It's really the plan, I think. There's also, from my perspective, a conflict. There was the floor bill versus the committee bill, things kind of reversed or something, I think. And so this bill should be opposed at all costs, is my understanding. I think that needs to be the message that gets out there. Thanks.
Okay, was there a question there? I don't think so.
Yeah, the question was, is there was there a conflict between the bill that finally got to the floor in the committee, and is that confusing people?
Yeah, everyone, if you're not speaking, please mute yourselves. And does someone want to answer that question? Janine, Angelica? Okay.
What was the specific?
Well,
question?
the question was, is there a difference between the bill that went to the assembly and the resolution? And I think I know the answer to that, but go ahead, you answer it.
Well, they're both, it's a resolution
Mhm.
that she submitted a resolution.
Yeah, and that is the answer to the question, is there's no conflict between that and the bill because there is no bill. So, okay. Marilyn, do you have a question? Would you like to ask?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. At the convention, Ruth held a little meeting after the senior caucus meeting to encourage everyone to apply for committees, because that's where we can really make a difference. I'd like to know how many people did. I applied for a number of them.
Okay, why don't we do this? Why don't we lower all the hands, which I don't think I can do actually. So lower that, if your hand is up, lower it. In fact, I can do it one at a time. Okay, there we go. Okay, if you applied to be on a committee, and of course, to be on a committee, you have to be a delegate, raise your electronic hand and we'll see how many hands go up.
That's wonderful.
That is very nice. So far 12.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it's
They're-
well 11. Some people have given up, so they've lowered their hand. Let's assume 12 out of 50 is 25%. So that's pretty good, and there's probably a lot of people here who are not delegates who can't. And
Chair, I'll also add that when I spoke with Assemblywoman Chavo's office, they said that even though the resolution didn't pass at the, well, it did pass, but it was kind of mutilated, unfortunately. But the attention that has been given to ACO REACH has really helped the situation. And that even, you know what I mean? Like even that has its good points that that everybody was talking about it. So.
okay, very good. Anything else you want to add to that, Janine or Angelica? I think it's time to move on.
That's fine. I just want to make sure everyone knows I'll through the email, I will communicate maybe a short recap of what can be done to write to the committee, to the health commission, and to, you know, your representatives. Thank you.
And we might put that in a newsletter that goes out to the people who are on our email list, the 800 and some odd people that are. Okay.
And then I received a direct chat message asking about the timeline for work on the position request to the CDP. And please do reach out to me. That time can change. This could very well pass in July. I believe it's supposed to come out of Health Committee, as Janine mentioned, and it may be considered and voted on in July or August. Even if you think you're not sure, please do reach out to me. I'll drop my information in the chat. Thank you.
Okay, I lowered your hands if you wanted to ask a question, because it really is time to move on to the next thing. So I think if unless Janine or Angelica have something else to add, I think we'll do that. So up next, we have something I mentioned earlier in the meeting, was that we want to leave it up to you, our members and such, as to what topics we cover throughout the year. And we had a meeting early in the year where you were giving us ideas for topics, and we haven't been able to get to those topics because all of our meetings have been burdened with business. And our next one will be too, for that matter. But once we're done with having those meetings, we're going to go into what you want to do, to talk about. So what I'm going to do now is ask Carol to unmute and list what we came up with in, I think it was January. And we'll have a little poll and see what people think and prioritize them. So Carol, if you could unmute and list them off.
Okay. First off, I came to my local Starbucks for the connection and it was very quiet until this moment. So I hope the background noise isn't too much. Let me know if it is. So we had the meeting in January having people bring up topics and what we'd like to focus on for the next year. And there's 6. So the 6 topics are debunking Social Security myths, like the fact that it's not coming out of the congressional money. It's not an entitlement, even though it actually really is, because we're entitled to it because we put our money in it. So anyway, there's other Social Security myths that we want to fight. The second one is fighting to keep the Social Security offices open. That's very important. I don't have to explain why. The third is LGBTQ plus senior issues and senior issues of other marginalized communities. I know that it's a real problem among homeless shelters. You know, there's already a problem with in the homeless shelters and the dorm situations with LGBTQ, and then with this, you throw in the senior and people are sleeping in their cars rather than going to shelters they could be using. That's just one issue. Also, rising utility costs, which that's number 4. Number 5 is improving Medicare. And number 6 is getting younger people to see seniors as relevant to them. So we'll be voting on that and just kind of prioritizing which we'll be working on the most. But there will be chances to work for all of these in the coming year. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone want to have one of those clarified? I know that I personally am a little confused about getting younger people to see seniors as relevant. I take that as probably dealing with the ageism that seniors are subjected to, along with, that goes hand in hand with the ageism that, frankly, we sometimes express to the younger people. So that's the way I interpret it. I assume, this list was made word for word with what people came up with in January. Deborah, I see you have your hand up. Is there something you'd like clarified?
Yes, good morning, everyone. My question has to do with the Social Security myth, but more about what we can do to strengthen it, like ending caps and things like that. I think this is an important bit of legislation. I know there's been some talks in the works of doing such, but as a body, I think we just need to be a little stronger and louder about it.
Yes, and in fact, that's the whole purpose of this poll, is to prioritize these topics, which we'll be handling in meetings similar to this one over the year. And what you're talking about definitely is improving Medicare. So that's that. Mary, you have a quick question?
Yes, thank you for taking my question. What I'm interested in helping with is reaching out to limited English speaking seniors, because we don't do enough to reach out to them. They're a huge part of our population. And I worked in that field for 25 years. I owned a Spanish language and English language broadcast stations and also print media. And it is so important to reach out to them. And I think it would be very important segment of our caucus.
Okay, that is a really good point, and really, it's sort of what we have in mind for the LGBTQ plus senior issues and senior issues of other marginalized communities. In fact, if it's prioritized, Our plan is, for instance, to have a joint meeting at a convention or an e-board meeting with the Chicano Latino Caucus, with
I'm a member of that caucus.
the API Caucus, and any marginalized caucus. And their problem really is going to be not just seniors, but any of them who are not, English speakers first or have problems with English. So if you are going to vote, I would vote for that one. And on that, Dottie, your hand is up. And then we'll do the poll. Dottie, do you have something you want to ask or add?
Okay, I think I was muted. I was talking. I'm not muted anymore.
You were.
Okay, in terms of the comment about young people versus seniors not being relevant, I'm kind of lost with that one. And also in terms of, I have some concerns about Social Security, but I won't go on and on because the meeting is not for me to monopolize. And also in terms of non-English speakers, what I'd like to ask in terms of non-English speakers, what are we doing or what are they doing to become English speakers? So what do we think about that? And don't get me wrong, having been an educator and a community
Dottie, these are things for discussion if and when we prioritize them. So
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It seems like the question you have is to clarify what getting younger people to see seniors is relevant. And we don't know, I don't think any of us know what whoever came up with this in January had in mind. I'm interpreting that to the ageism that we're experiencing both in this general public and in the public at large. So with that, shall I launch the poll? I think I better because we're running out of we've caught up anyway. So I'm going to launch the poll that'll pop up on your screen. Please vote in the poll and only vote once. What you'll see is those 7 topics and check mark how you feel about them. And but don't prioritize more than 3. And we'll take the ones that get the most votes and prioritize them throughout the year. And needless to say, there will be things that come up throughout the year that may, take priority. There's so many unpredictable things that go on in the world. So with that, I'm going to launch the poll. It'll pop up on your screen. And here it comes. So hopefully you see it and can take the poll, and it's a long poll. So just scroll down and answer each regarding the 7 items. So we'll do that. We'll leave that poll up and move on to the next topic. And the topic is what I think is kind of an interesting one, I think. And that is, it's something that I hadn't really thought of. But we want to talk about how we've had this pandemic. It's had a major effect on everybody, but the ones that it's had a major effect on are seniors. Who are housebound and maybe can't get to what they need to get to for medical help or financial help, etc. And to that end, I will ask Carol to introduce our speaker that we have on that topic. So, Carol?
I'm sorry, actually, this was Janine's.
Oh, okay, Janine.
Thank you.
Sure. So we have Karen reside here, and she is the president of Gray Panthers. She resides in Long Beach. And she also, you know, I actually heard about the Gray Panthers when I went to the memorial service for Julia Scoville, who was Carrie Scoville. I'm not sure I've seen her here today yet, but her and her mother was a member of this caucus and a long time, more than an activist, like a super activist, anti-war. And so that's where I heard about the Gray Panthers, and there's just such a wonderful organization. And I'm going to put in the chat, Karen, the 10-point, what's it called? The 10-point plan. But I also know that you're with the LA County. I don't know whether it's the commission, but if you could explain that a little bit. I know that you're with them for the aging and disabilities group. So welcome, Karen. Thanks for coming.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. As a lifelong Democrat, the only one in a family of Republicans, I really appreciated Mike's comment about ageism, because that is one of the largest issues that we face for older adults. That and kind of marginalization of low income seniors, particularly those that are of color. And we were founded actually as a national organization. We are what's called a network. And there are Gray Panther networks all across the United States, and they're starting to expand as well internationally. There are some starting up in Europe, and I believe there's 2 groups in Africa. So the Gray Panthers were started by a woman, Maggie Kuhn, who was very unconventional in 1972. And they had this long, ridiculous name about older adults and younger people working together on social issues. And Maggie shortened it to Age and Youth in Action. And we just received an award from Los Angeles County, where I am a commissioner on the Commission on Aging and Disabilities. And that is a brand new department. It was just founded last summer under the leadership of Dr. Laura Trejo, who was an intern with Maggie Kuhn. So the influence of the Gray Panthers are just embedded, whether you know it or not, all over the place. Dr. Donna Benton, who runs the caregiving center at USC, was also a former Gray Panther. So the original premise with the Gray Panthers were that older adults were capable of speaking for themselves, and they were capable of working with younger people to advance the causes. One of the first causes was fighting the Vietnam War. And it wasn't hard to get the young people involved. That's during the time period when I grew up. And I got pregnant as a teenager. And one of the saving graces was that my ex-husband did not have to get drafted. So it was a time of great turbulence. And
Okay.
And Maggie she loved the turbulence. She was very outspoken, and she was a very unique woman. She formed the organization because in those days, there were mandatory retirement ages. And I talk about ageism. And Maggie was forced to retire. She had been a social worker for most of her life. She had never married. That kind of wasn't an acceptable thing. She worked for the Presbyterian Church, and they forced her to retire when she turned 62. And that wasn't okay with Maggie. So she got some of her social worker friends who were in the same situation, and they decided they were going to overturn this mandatory retirement rule. And they were very successful, and that they got legislation passed. And so we've always been kind of advocacy based. Yeah, she was a baby, but she was a very powerful baby. And she never had any children. She never married. She had lots of partners in a time when you just didn't do that thing. And there are a number of them that are still alive. And talking to them is very interesting. They really had a lot of respect. There are people still around. She died in 1995, I believe it was, that still remember Maggie and knew her personally. We have a number of people in Long Beach that worked with her, although we're losing them at a rapid pace. All progressives and people that were kind of leaders. Sharon Cottrell, she was the first woman to be hired as a port labor worker. Victoria Price, who is a professor at Cal State Dominguez Hills, who was one of the first female electricians in the union. A lot of forward-thinking women, of course. And the Long Beach chapter was formed shortly after Maggie started the national organization. We were formed about 1974. And we almost died out in the 2000s. And our former president, Myron Woolen, and I, a mutual friend, referred me to Myron. We got together and we revived the Gray Panthers. There were about 6 members in the 2016. When Myron and I got together, we now have over 100 members. And I just got 4 calls alone this week about people wanting to start a network. We work with 6 other networks within the state of California, and along with the national headquarters, which is in Michigan. There are chapters still alive. They almost died out in the 2000s. But with all the election of Trump, it's kind of evolved into interest in reviving networks and organizing seniors to be more active. We took the Asian Youth in Action together, and we worked with Cal State Long Beach, and we developed an internship program. Some of the other chapters also have interns. We're on a social justice progressive agenda, and we are active in 18 different areas. Last semester, we had 37 interns, and those students are mostly in the health education department, but they are interested in older adults in capturing their stories. And I just want to finish up. Yes, but there are still things you can do. And we had a couple of students, one of which we had been talking about history. The students are very interested. One of the things they have to do for their internship is they have to interview an older adult. Most of them choose to interview their parents or grandparents. And we ask them to find out how their family came to be in the United States. I'm very interested in genealogy. And that one student, his father was a truck driver from Mexico, never known his father. He did the 23andMe thing, and he found his grandfather. So now his father, and his grandfather all have a relationship. So young people totally get it. And when they hear the stories, it's been so healing for younger people. Everybody wants to have a place where they belong and feel appreciated and that they have value. And that's not something we as a society encourage a lot of times, especially when we're so divided. But that's something that we seek to inculcate in our interns. And then they go out and replicate that. So I have great faith in the world. I have a much more positive attitude. I sincerely looked into moving to Canada when Trump was elected. But these young people, they get it. They totally get it. We have to have an inclusive world where everybody is appreciated and valued, and then everybody has something that they can contribute. So everything that all of you are saying is really important. And it's the same thing. We keep dismissing the immigrant populations. There's a huge shortage of caregivers in our country because we closed our borders so tightly, and we devalue our immigrant populations. This is creating a great strain on the older populations. These are the messages. And fortunately, in California, there's been legislation passed that allows family members, even if they're undocumented, to become caregivers and to receive pay for that. A lot of people immigrating come because they want a better life for their children. There are not the resources available in their countries, home countries, that there are in the United States. If you have a disabled child, they're doomed to have a less than ideal life. And one of our biggest advocates is my particular councilwoman in District 1 in Long Beach. She is an immigrant. Her family brought her here when she was 3 and got polio and became wheelchair confined. And her parents knew that she would not have a life in Mexico. So they migrated legally to California when she was very young. And now she's our city council member, has been a courageous progressive leader in our community. And so many of the young people, when they hear the stories of how their parents came to be, they develop a new appreciation for older adults. So there are so many things that we can do. And as LA County gets ready to work on the reauthorization of the Older Americans Act, that's where most of the money comes from for older American services. Older adults were the largest growing segment of the population. We're the largest growing segment of the homeless population. We had an increase of 1,200 homeless people in our annual counts this year. And we had been telling them when they ended the city, when they ended the moratorium, that this was going to happen. And sure enough, landlords are rushing to evict older adults, even though they paid their rent on time for 30 years in some cases. They're still getting eviction notices. Older adults do not have enough protections from those that have ageist attitudes and don't value them as contributing members of the community. I know, and this is one of the big values that I would like to see taken on for the next election, because it's shocking how many older adults don't vote. And Social Security, we took a busload with California Alliance of Retired Americans of people from our area to protest at Kevin McCarthy's office, as he threatens to use Medicare and Social Security as negotiating tools for the debt ceiling negotiations. Those are not his to use in that manner. And there were over 1,000 seniors, angry seniors, that went. And we had 6 of our interns that went also. And they were, I mean, it's first action they had ever participated in. And you're talking about young adults, 25. We need to get them active, involved, and participating in actions, because they will, and then they totally get it. They totally they're still talking about that experience. We want to get them to Sacramento so they can see how legislation is developed in person. And that's one of our main goals, is to help them understand that they can influence the legislation that is happening. So we're, yes, it is. And we are inspired every day by their efforts. They learn very quickly how important it is. We're located in Long Beach Senior Center. We have an office, and we do food distributions twice a week. As soon as the SNAP benefit was reduced, the numbers went from 35, now they're up to 100 people coming every day, each of those days, to get food. So there are living, breathing examples, and we've been working on organizing the seniors through doing activities. We had 100 seniors that came for World Elder Abuse Day. This is another very underexposed issue. Long Beach is the greatest producer of new cases in elder abuse in Los Angeles County. And about 400 new cases are opened every month. The seniors don't understand what elder abuse is. nor do their children, grandchildren. And no, we don't have a network in San Diego, although I have gotten a couple of inquiries to do so. So there's some people working on it. So I think there's a unique opportunity to organize older adults to advance, because the democratic issues are older adult issues. So, and with that, I'll stop and if there's any questions.
Thank you so much, Karen. I know you could go on. Karen asked me how long she had to speak because she says that she can really fill up time if which is just amazing. Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Mike, I don't know whether you want to kind of take it.
No, if there are any questions, raise your hand. We still have a few minutes on this topic.
I know there's a question in the chat on whether there's a San Diego chapter, and I went ahead and put greypantherspac.com in the chat. Is that the best place to go and check for all various information?
The best place is to look at our website, because we're going to start keeping it updated on a weekly basis about what's going on. And we want to have at least one place where people know, especially older people, can go and know that they're going to get accurate information on issues. And the national organization doesn't keep theirs updated.
Would you mind giving us the website?
It's www.longbeachgray, spelled Gray, Panthers.org. And you can sign up for our newsletter there also. And I see there's a couple of hands raised.
Terrific. Mike, I don't know whether you want to navigate it or should I?
No, I'll just, I'll sort of navigate it. Michelle, why don't you go? I'm giving priority to people who aren't officers.
Okay. Yeah, it's the first time I've been here, and this is great. I mean, I really, really like it. Karen, it was so interesting what you said. Just really, I can't even compliment you people enough for everything you're doing. One thing I'd like to suggest is that since as seniors, I think we see things more holistically and not quite so ideologically because we've had experience. And I often hear about, these horrible things with seniors losing their homes. And it's true, but I think there's another side of the story, at least for small landlords. And I, by some weird fluke, ended up being a very, very small landlord in order to put my daughter through college. I sold my home and moved into a fourplex. And I'll tell you, you do not make a lot of money. And the laws that are protective of seniors tend to really dissuade small property owners from renting to seniors because you don't get any breaks, right? It's not like your property tax goes down. So I would suggest, in order to succeed on this issue, that you get all the stakeholders involved in a conversation. And I'm not talking about big landlords that own thousands of units, but the majority of housing is owned by small landlords. So that is meant as a constructive suggestion to help seniors from becoming homeless.
So was there a question in that?
Well, I'm just wondering if it's possible to kind of get a more comprehensive stakeholder outreach to deal with these policy questions, to come up with better resolutions, better suggestions to elected officials, because they are very ideologically based. And it's either one side or the other. And when you do that, so my degree is in policy. When you do that, you end up with a lousy policy, and it's not going to work for the people that you're advocating for. So my question is there room for that in this kind of organization? Karen, do you think?
I know some of the best meetings we have involve discussions. We are a bipartisan nonprofit. We have a 501c3 organization. Not all Gray Panther chapters are organized that way, but the best meetings are when we have those healthy, open discussions.
Okay.
in more sides of an issue. And our meetings are open. Anybody is invited. They're the first Saturday of the month. You're all welcome if you go to our website. We do a hybrid meeting for those that are ill and can't attend in person. We want people to be able to listen, even if they can't attend in person. And we are in the process of starting to record our meetings and put them online. So we try to advocate for a balanced approach. We want people to understand where to find information that's relative to themselves, accurate information, because people, especially with the advent of AI, people are going to have so many problems in knowing where to go to find true information.
Yeah. Okay, well, good. I'll go on the website and maybe just contact you or someone. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, coincidentally, this is the time this topic was supposed to end. So that's...
Mike, if I can just, I just want to make one more comment before we let Karen go. You know, it's just so valuable, this internship program. It's like a magnet for the younger generation who wants to know how to navigate. And also with all the activism experience that Gray Panthers has, it's almost like they can cut to the chase on how to get things done, and I can see, the value of just recommending it to a lot of the younger people that want to get into activism, want to know how to get things done, that this would be a shortcut. This would be like a crash course to get involved that way. So I can see why you won the award with LA County. So thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I was just checking to make sure I was not muted and not just talking to myself. But thank you, Karen. And the next thing on our agenda here is the results of the prioritization poll. And I'm sure you're all on the edge of your seats waiting to hear that. And I can say that let me turn my camera on so that you don't have to just look at my name. There I am. Improving Medicare came in first with 78% of the vote. Second was debunking Social Security myths, came in second with 61%. I see a theme here of interest. And third was what? Senior issues of marginalized communities, including LGBTQ+. So, and that was with 57%. So we will keep that in mind as we come up with agendas for our upcoming meetings. So thanks you all for voting. And we can move on now to is Pat Johnstone, are you here? If so, raise your hand.
Right here.
Boy, are you here? There you are. Okay, Pat is a member of our election committee. Every caucus has an election committee that is in charge of the elections for officers and maybe some other stuff too. And she's going to give us an update on where it stands, what's going on, and what's going to happen in the future. So, Pat, take it away.
Okay, so the main point, the main reason I wanted to jump on today was to remind everyone who might be interested in running for office in the senior caucus elections that today at 11:59 p.m. is the deadline for getting your self-nomination forms emailed back to the committee. Now that there have been multiple notices on this, but if for any reason you do not have that form and you are interested in running, please get in touch. I'll put the email in the chat, which is scelections2023@gmail.com. The offices available are chair, vice chairs for North, Central, and South, secretary, treasurer, and communications. Again, the deadline for the self-nomination form to be submitted is tonight at 11:59 p.m. We'll be monitoring the email account throughout the day to make sure we have everybody that's interested. The next step after this, once we have all these self-nomination forms in, will be to hold the actual election, and that will happen on July 22nd. There will be a meeting in the morning, and then the election will take place. We are currently looking at and testing several electronic ways to do that, and we will have information on that for the executive committee shortly for approval. So once again, don't forget the big deadline, 11:59 p.m. If you need help, I will put in the chat SC elections at 2023@gmail.com. And that's all I really needed to report. I know we've had a long meeting and everybody's anxious to get off. I'm going to type the email in the chat for everybody to have. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them right now.
Rick Hoffman, your hand is up. Do you have a question about this? You're muted.
Hey, Rick. Long time no see, Rick. Now you have to unmute and show your face. You're still muted, Rick.
Hello.
There he is, or his name anyway.
Zoom is giving me a tough time to unmute. Hi, Pat. Hi, Mike.
Hello.
Meeting. I thought that we have a full complement of officers on the last list that I saw. So I'm curious about the request for other candidates.
So what happened on May 24th at our meeting at the time of the convention, it was decided to start the election process again because there had been some deficiencies in the original process. And we wanted everything to be clear and transparent and, you know, all the I's dotted and T's crossed. So we started the process on May 24th. On Saturday, June 3rd, the self-nomination forms were emailed to all the members, and today is the deadline for that. If anyone wants to run for these offices, there was, I'd have to go into my file and look, but there is a contested, at least one contested race. So that's why this timeline. But the as I say, it is still open for people to run if anyone wants to run, but it'll be closed as of 11:59 p.m. tonight, and then we will go to the election in a little under a month.
But sometime soon, Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, blast will go out to everyone saying who's running for what.
Yeah,
So
there'll be blasts with who is running after we've got everything filed, and we just double check that everybody is registered as Democrats and everything else they need to be, and members of this caucus. We will send out information regarding the candidates with their statements. We are hoping as well on July 22nd at that meeting to have each of the candidates speak to us briefly, because that meeting was solely for the purpose of election.
mm-hmm. It should be one of our shorter meetings unless people get into fist fights.
But
hopefully not.
Okay. Any other questions on this issue? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is very simply to adjourn the meeting. But before we do, I just want to say there's a lot of good links in the chat. And if you open up your chat box, down at the very bottom, there are some options, and one of them is an ellipse, 3 dots, and you can click on that if it's there, and then hit hit save chat and it'll save it on your computer so you can refer to it later on and maybe go to some of the links that were brought up. Marilyn, your hand is up.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Very good meeting. You did a good job.
Thank you.
I want to go back to the mailing list issue.
Mhm.
Would it be possible to ask people to donate whatever they can so we can keep the mailing, everybody on the mailing list? And also, are we going to first ask who wants to stay on the mailing list?
Well, here's the problem, Marilyn. We're not allowed to ask for donations by the CDP. So that is a problem. I suppose we could send a mailing out and give people the option. No, we can't do that. I was going to say to opt out, but I don't think that would work. If you are a member, or what we will be doing is going through the mail list and taking the people's whose membership expired the longest time ago and remove them in order to come up with the 500. And that might be, I think it goes back to something like 2017. So if your membership expired in 2017 and you haven't renewed it, when the time comes, because this is not going to happen immediately, if you can always renew it so that it expires December 31st, 2023. But if it expired in 2017, we will probably renew you, and then we'll go in expiration order until we get down to 500. And,
are you also going to ask the question of who wants to remain on the mailing list?
Yeah, that's hard to do. I don't know how we can do that. I guess we could in a blast put in a you're on the mailing list now, you may expire. In fact, we can put in what date you'll expire in a blast. If you want to remain on the mailing list but not be a member, well, if you want to remain on the mailing list, you have two options. One is you can three options really. You can join the caucus. You can get a waiver and join the caucus, or you can just tell us you don't want to be, you want to remain on the mailing list, and we'll give an email address to send that to. So that would work, I think.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay. Ricky, is your hand still up, or did you have something else?
Yeah, hi, Carol. Good to see you. Last time I saw you was on Hoover about a year ago. So I'm glad that you're doing communications for the caucus. I've been a communications person for the Progressive Caucus when it began, for the Computer and Internet Caucus, for the LGBT, the Gay Caucus, and for multiple other groups here in San Francisco. I'm not clear how much it's costing us now, so I don't understand why it's a critical issue to represent 400 people.
I can answer that, Rick.
Well,
right now it costs us nothing, but Google bought MailChimp that we use, and they don't like giving stuff away that they think they can make a profit on. And therefore they've come up with this new rule that the free account is only good to 500. And the next up account is $50 a month, which would be $600 for a period of a year. Our dues are so low, and so many of our members choose to get a waiver that we can't afford that, especially when you consider that we will be having in-person meetings, probably hybrid meetings. And at the convention that we just had, in order to have a room, the charge was $1,500 to each caucus. And we certainly can't afford that, but we will alleviate that somewhat by having joint meetings as part of our, LGBT and other marginalized communities sharing a meeting with. But even so, $600 is what we can afford. So hopefully that answered your question.
Well, it does, and it kind of doesn't as well. I personally spend almost $100 a month to maintain my own database, and it's critical to the work that I do for the gay community, professionalization for women, for the Sierra Club, multiple other groups I'm active with, the Gray Panthers in San Francisco. It's worth it to me, $100 a month, to be able to continue to communicate with the 4,000 people that I have on my lists, and for the caucus not to have $25 or $50 a month seems, I don't want to spend the caucus's money, but it's not an overwhelming amount. $50 is really not a lot.
Well,
Mike,
it's the $600 for the year that will kill us. We do have some money, and we could keep it going for a little while at $50 a month. But once we have to start paying for rooms at meetings, that'll wipe out any money we've got. One potential solution might be to raise the cost of membership a little bit. Our membership now is $10 a year, of which the CDP gets half. And that means for all of our members, and we have 256, so that's about $1,000, a little more. It's about $1,500, I guess, somewhere around there. That would pay for one room at one of the three convention/e boards, and we just can't sustain that. So we may have to raise our dues a little bit, or encourage people to go at the higher rate of $25. But as I say, we can't take donations. But Rick, let's talk about this offline. You can find my phone number on cadem.org. If you go into resources and caucuses, you'll find the senior caucus, and my phone number is on there. So up next is Janine.
Thank you. Well, two things I wanted to mention. One is I'm a big phone banker for various things, and I'd be interested if anybody wants to join me in calling the 400 people that are not members, that aren't responding to emails or whatever, and do some outreach. Because if we were to just get a portion of those people to join again, it would be taking care of the MailChimp right there. The other thing is that, if we had 50 people give another $10 a year, even, commit to it now, we could fund it. Because I do think that, sometimes people don't realize that they've lapsed, and they, it just looks like a automated email, and they may not realize. So a personal outreach might actually do the trick.
Janine, could you would you mind putting your phone number in the chat, and then we'll ask people to save the chat? And if you want to help Janine with a phone bank, find her phone number in the chat and give her a call and offer your help, and she'll organize it, because I just heard her volunteer for that. Sorry. Okay, let's go quickly now, because I had a bet that we would not be able to finish before 10:40, and it now looks like I'm going to win that bet. It looked for a minute like I might win, but or might not win, but apparently that's not the case. So everybody save the chat. And I'm Rick, Hopman, as I said, please, you give me a call and we'll talk offline. And Angelica, you had your hand up. Okay.
Oh, I just wanted to quickly mention that in the past year, we did add multiple. We only had one type of membership, and we do now have multiple types of membership. So if it comes time to renew, there are other levels. If you are in a position to do so, we'd be grateful for that.
Mm-hmm. And by joining a second time in the same year is kind of a sideways way to actually donate, because all memberships are considered donations. So on that note, I'm going to lower Rick's hand. On that note, I think it's time to adjourn unless anyone really objects and thinks that we should go on longer. So this is your opportunity to save the chat. I'll give you a minute or so to do that. And I would like to ask the officers to stay on the call just a little bit longer, for a little wrap up between the seven of us. So on that note, meeting adjourned. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Good job.
Mike, I'm not an officer. I really have a hard stop. I've got to be someplace.
Oh, no problem. No problem. And thank you very much,
You needed
Pat.
to do. Okay, I'm going.
Bye.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, Karen.
Yes, thank you, Karen. Thank you.